Ahimsa is a Samanya Dharma, non-injury. But Vishesha Dharma of a soldier is to die on the battlefield, is to kill and be killed. He is doing Himsa, right? But that Himsa is not Adharma. Because that is a Vishesha Dharma, that is a special duty for that soldier. So the beauty of Sanatana Dharma is it gives very generic, broad, universal principles, but at the same time, it also gives a tailor-made way of contextualization of these principles as applicable to different people in different situations.
This will be a conversation in a dialogue format. I have read the book Samanya Dharma and I have framed certain questions for Nitinji. We'll be asking those questions to him and he'll be enlightening us upon this topic. I have the book with me here. It's Samanya Dharma. It's a succinct book, around 100 pages. But I must say, Nitinji, you have summed it up really well. And so let's start from the cover page. So I can see a four-legged bull on this cover page, and there's something written on each of the limbs of that bull. So it's Saucha, Tapas, Daya, and Satya. So why only a bull, and why are these terms written on it? What's the significance?
Thank you, Ratuja. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I'm always happy to appear on Sangam Talks. So, interesting question. I mean, a lot of people are not aware, but just as a cow has a very important place in Hindu tradition and culture, likewise, the bull also has a very important role. And this bull, the symbol of metaphor of bull, has been always associated with dharma, just as cow is associated with bhumi. In the Puranas we have this story of Prithvi, Prithu, Raja Prithu, and all. There are a lot of stories there, wherein in the Prithvi itself, the earth, bhumi itself, takes up the form of a cow to when she runs away. That there is a whole story. I won't go into there. But just as cow is associated with bhumi, dharma is associated with bull. Bull is a representative of dharma, because in a sense, just the comparison is striking, because we have a very particular notion of marriage in Hindu philosophy, Hindu culture, and that notion is here also. The role of the husband in the Hindu household, according to the Shastric perspective, is that of protection of the wife, protection of the children, and protection of everyone. So, dharma is what protects the earth, protects bhumi. So that is why the bull represents dharma, whereas the cow represents bhumi. Bhumi means the whole existence, you can say, and how we are living. And dharma, by definition, is that which upholds, that which protects, and so on and so forth. So basically, why this bull? There are specific references. For example, in Varaha Purana, I think I have included a prayer in the very beginning of the book. It's to the bull of Dharma from Varaha Purana, wherein it specifically speaks about bull-shaped one with 4 feet, 4 horns, 3 eyes, 7 hands, and 3 joints. So it's specifically calling Dharma as one who is a bull. And then there is a about why those particular this Shaucha, Tapas, Daya, and Satya on the legs of bull is it has to do with the story in, I think it is in Bhagavad Purana, if I am not mistaken. It is story of Raja Parikshit on the just before the dawn of the Kali Yuga, when after the Mahabharata war, everything was over. I think it was Parikshit's time. So he was roaming around. Whole earth was under his rule, and he saw that there is some person who is mercilessly beating a cow. Okay, and mercilessly beating a cow, and I think a bull was also injured. He was mercilessly beating them, and the three legs of the bull were already broken, and only it was standing with great difficulty with one single leg. And that bull was Dharma, and that person who was beating was Kali Purusha, the personification of Kali Yuga that we are currently living in. So there the enunciation says that what are the four legs of this bull of Dharma? They are Shaucha, Tapas, Daya, and Satya. And in the Satya Yuga, in the Krita Yuga, wherein Dharma is said to be standing on four legs. So there the Dharma is in full-fledged force. There Adharma is in the background, but Dharma is completely standing on all the four legs, fully stable. It stands on these four legs: Shaucha, Tapas, Daya, and Satya. Because these are all universal principles, universal qualities, universal values which uphold this existence. And with each yuga passing, as we move from a ideal state to degenerated state, so when Satya Yuga passes, one leg is cut off. So this is a metaphorical story to say that in today's time, only the dharma stands on only Satya. Every other leg of the bull has been cut. So it is not that today we don't need to practice shaucha or tapas or daya. It is that the nature of the society today is that you can see that there is hardly any shaucha. I mean, the standard of shaucha, for example, very good simple example I will give is if you read the shastras, for example, Dharma Shastra and all, wherein they give the ideals how to live and all. It simply to today's mind, post-colonial, colonial, colonized society for us, like people like us, it appears completely outdated. The reason it appears outdated is that it is simply we feel that it is impractical, impossible. It speaks not much about those texts. It speaks much about ourselves, that our capacity has reduced. So we cannot practice this shaucha. Whatever reasons we may give, the shaucha we are practicing or we are able to practice is just a very small portion of what the ideal is. Similarly, tapas. If you read Itihasa Puranas, Mahabharata, or what any other, even in Mahabharata, for example, the kind of tapas, say for example, Arjuna did, to gain his knowledge of the weapons and everything. Even that kind of tapas we are unable to do. Forget about all the Vedic rishis who did millions of years of tapas. I mean, now people will say those are all made up stories. So that doesn't matter. Let us forget that. Even the kind of tapas, even our ancestors 300 years back, the kind of tapas they did, we are unable to do today. So tapas is another leg that is weakened today. It is only very few people here and there can do. Daya, there is less said the better. There is hardly any daya in the world, right? So I don't need to actually enunciate. So Satya is still there. Again, that is also in a weakened condition, but still there. There are still people. There are still we all value truth to some extent, though we all lie through our teeth every other day. But still we value Satya as a whole. Still we teach children be truthful. So this is the basic criteria. I mean, basically, this bull is a representation of Sanatana Dharma as a whole, you can say. But most importantly, representation of Dharma as a principle, Dharma as something, especially the universal, the ethical principles, which are applicable to everyone. And I think we'll be asking more questions about which are universal principles, which are not. So I will not go into that right now. You can ask me next question.
Let's go into the book now. And you explained the Chaturveda Purushartha theory in the book, and wherein you say that the principle of dharma must act as a guiding force to pursue kama and artha. So why do you say so? Because nowadays a common perception is that someone who is dharmic, he should must not be attached to kama or artha. This usually how we take this. So why do you say so?
See, I think the reasoning is not very clear to me, but over the last many centuries or at least few decades, we have developed, I think perhaps it has to do with the socialist mindset in the post independence world, that pursuit of artha and kama is opposite to pursuit of dharma. And that is what a conventional understanding is, which is actually incorrect understanding. Because we as a civilization have always, the very reason why we have this notion of Chaturvida Purushartha is because there are four Purusharthas. Purushartha means that which gives artha or meaning to our life. That is which is the purpose of our life, which through which we attain fulfillment of our life. And our acharyas, our rishis have enunciated how there are four such broad categories or four such broad goals, so to speak, that gives meaning to us: the dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. Dharma refers to these ethical and responsibility aspects. Especially, dharma refers to that which gives you punyam, the spiritual or otherworldly merit, so to speak, or karmic merit. There is no proper translation, I can say, for the punyam, papam, and all. Basically, karmic merit is punyam. That is what dharma gives. Artha gives you material prosperity, security, and food, shelter, and such basic things. And artha also has to do with power, and that we often forget. There is a reason why Arthashastra is called as Arthashastra, because Arthashastra scope is completely state power and state administration. But Artha is usually translated as wealth. Artha is not just wealth; it is also power. So Artha is fulfills our the importance of power. Power is important in our life, so that is why that is also one of the Purushartha. Then there is Kama, our desires that we need to fulfill. We have so many desires, we are not a desire negating civilization. However, we are not also a civilization which recklessly pursue desire. The way the perversion happened in the last few decades that we see in the modern urban areas, even today in India, but more in the West. We are not that civilization also. We are the civilization who wants to pursue artha and kama in a restrained and a regulated manner, in such a manner that there is no negative consequences of this purushartha. Because our ultimate goal is moksha, which is ultimate knowledge, is moksha, the liberation from this bondage of life cycle and death. Okay, that ultimate goal is always there in the mind, but most of the 99.99% will not be achieving moksha in this life. That is also a fact. So it is idiotic to think that all of us will take up sannyasa and become, renunciates and achieve. No, that is not there. Renunciation is there for only a small percentage of people who are ready for it, who have certain qualities that needed to take it, especially the dispassion. But not all of us have it. So what should we do? 99% of the population, we have to follow this Chaturveda Purushartha, wherein the ultimate goal is dharma, moksha. But to reach there, we have to work through many lifetimes. So what does working through there means? To fulfill your desires, fulfill your desire, kama, or desire in the sense of artha, but through dharma you fulfill it. You fulfill it. Why? A very simple example I'll give. You want to become rich. There are two ways to do it. You can earn money in you can join a job, you can do a business and earn money, or you can just loot somebody, loot a bank, or loot a temple, smuggle a idol from the temple, like a lot of people are doing, right? So both are means of earning money, though both can be called as artha, but both do not give similar results, in the sense, while they both can give you money, but they in the case of if you're looting and doing such things, ultimately not only that the law catches up and you will end up in prison most probably, but even if you manage to prevent going to prison, your karma catch up with you. The doctrine of karma is central to Hindu dharma, our worldview. Whatever action you do, you will get its result. There is a verse in one of the Puranas which says, even if million years happen, whatever you action do, good or bad, it will never go waste. It will always give you fruit. If you do good action, what is good, what is bad? What is dharma is good, what is adharma is bad. Dharma by definition is that which gives you sukha, punyam and sukha. Punya is karmic merit. The result of that merit is that you will get happiness, sukha. And ultimately it will also help you to move towards moksha, because the more and more righteously you will do, the more and more your mind, your chitta will be purified. So you become slowly over the many lifetimes, you become purified enough to follow this path of Vedanta, follow the path to moksha in a more serious manner. So dharma is the key. It connects artha and kama on one hand and moksha on the other hand, and it ensures that we are able to fulfill our desires, be it for power, be it for anything else, in a way that its harmful effects are removed. It's a kind of a cushion that is given to you, kind of a protection net that is given to you. Look, you want to, for example, in our tradition, marriage is not just a contract. Marriage is not just two people having it's that, yeah, the all the love, the romance, the sparkles, all there, okay, fine, but it is not just that. It is much more than that. It The three pillars of marriage is dharma, praja and rati. Rati is takes care of the love and etc., but there are two more pillars. One is praja, which is bringing on offsprings, having children. The other is dharma, grihastha ashrama dharma, we call it, right? The grihastha dharma, the duty of a householder. What is that? Why is it is called as dharma? Because see, look, we all have this desire, sexual desire, desire for life partners, desire to have a safe and secure life with somebody to be with us, somebody to share our dreams, and all these things. What is the best way to do it? In which the what is the safest way, in which the negative consequences are less and positive aspects are more? That is what is marriage is all. Now you can say that today a lot of marriages are problematic. Today a lot of marriages have broken down. The society have broken down. There are a lot of divorces. There are domestic violence. That is all true. Yet you will see in the final analysis, Indian society even today is much better compared to, for example, a Western society where the marriage has completely broken down. Now there is an attempt to break down this marriage system completely even in India. Because see, you do not cut the head if there is a headache. You take a some medicine to rectify the headache, right? So if there are, see, all institutions have problems. See, because the source of the problem is human. We are all afflicted by problems. We are all afflicted by inner impurities, like kama, krodha, mada, lobha, all these things that are, say, the jealousy, hatred, and all those things. We are the problem. So institutions become corrupted by this. The solution is not that to you cut off the institution which is otherwise working well overall, right? So you have to design solutions to ensure that the problems are removed. So I think I digressed a bit. Yeah, you can.
No, no, you summarized it very well. And dharma is the key to whether karma, artha, or moksha. So, coming to our next question. So, how would you define dharma? So, this is a very ambiguous term. So, for our layman audience, for us, how would you define the dharma?
Okay. Okay. So the book I wrote to answer these kind of questions, I would really encourage everyone to read the book. But I will read few definitions from the book itself and briefly explain them so that it is useful to them. The most basic definition, the term itself, the dharma comes, etymologically also. It means dharayati iti dharma. That which upholds, that which holds together is dharma. In Mahabharata, Krishna says in Karna Parva, Dharana dharma mityahu, dharmo dharayate prajah. So dharma is that which upholds, that which holds together everything, that which sustains everything. Dharma upholds everything. Dharayate, dharana means that which holds together, that which bears the burden of everything. That is the most basic definition, and similar definition is given in even the Shruti. The Manarayana Upanishad says, Dharmo Vishwasya Jagataha Pratishtha Loke Dharmishta Praja Upasarpanti Dharmena Papam Anudati Dharme Sarvam Pratishtitam Tasma Dharmam Paramam Vadanti. Dharma is said to be the most great Paramam. Why? It upholds the whole universe. Vishwasya Jagata Pratishtha. It sustains the whole cosmos. And it removes all sins. Papam Anudati. All adharma, all sins, it is removed by dharma. For example, sin now, for example, if you speak lies, if you are speaking lies, falsehood, it is a papam. Sin has a very Christian baggage. So when I use sin, I do not mean the Christian version of sin. I mean simply the karmic demerit or adharma or papa. Falsehood is papam. How do you prevent doing that? You just speak the truth. That is the easiest way, right? So, and more importantly, if you are doing dharma, it causes chitta shuddhi. That is the purification of the mind, and hence it prevents one from doing papam even in future. See, this is a slow process. It's not aaj soch liya, I'll speak truth. Tomorrow I become enlightened. It's not like that. It's a slow process, very, very difficult process. But this is the process, and there is no other way to go. So that is why dharma is that which upholds, and it this upholding is a see the beauty of Shastra is it gives a very abstract definition wherein it can be contextualized to mean different things in different situations. In the context of the cosmos, we can speak about dharma as that which upholds the whole universe. The all the various ways the universe exists, how the different objects in the universe functions, different worlds function, all of them is upheld by dharma. But who is this dharma? It is Bhagavan itself. It is Ishvara itself. Because Upanishads say, Yato va bhutani jayante, that from which the universe has arisen, that in which the universe exists and into which that universe dissolves is that Brahman. Know that as Brahman. So Brahman is dharma. That Ishvara is dharma. But in an individual level, in you and me level, because that is what we are interested in, right? What does it mean? So there is another definition given in Vaisheshika Sutra which says, Yato abhyudaya nishreyasa siddhihi sa dharma. Very simple definition. What is dharma? That is dharma which gives siddhi, that which gives accomplishment of abhyudaya nishreyasa. Abhyudaya is all the attainments in this world, materialistic attainments, artha and kama. Nishreyasa, dharma and moksha. Or nishreyasa can be given only for moksha, that all spiritual attainments, the ultimate goal, spiritual goal. But abhyudaya is all dharma, artha, kama, all three of. So basically, it means that if you are traveling the path of dharma, you are safe. You will be able to fulfill all your desires in a safe manner. You may still feel sorrow. Why? Because of your previous actions from previous lives. But now you're ensuring that your next lives are better. You will be getting the fruits of your austerity now in that future. That future may be tomorrow, that future may be next life. Both is possible. It's not limited to just next life. So dharma is that. I gave the example of that earning money, right? You rob a bank, ultimately karma will catch up with you and you will suffer. Today you may become a crorepati by looting and corrupting and everything, but you will fall. We have so many examples today. I don't want to take names, big names who have fallen, but there are others who have not fallen in this life, but they will face the consequences in next life, if not this. But on the other hand, those who pursue their desires within the confines of dharma, by following the prescriptions of Shastra to best of their ability and by surrender to Ishvara, then they will be saved. Then they will be even, they will, the result of that righteous path, so to speak, will be punyam, sukha, happiness. So that happiness is ensured. So that is one of the most basic definition and most important definition of dharma. And now there are many different definitions. I have given other definitions also. But one more definition, I think this may follow into, I want to just take up, is there is another definition which is given in Mimamsa Sutra, wherein it is said, Chodana Lakshano Dharma. Dharma is that which is prescribed by Shruti, that is Veda. So that comes to the different aspect of the question, wherein how do we know what is Dharma and what is not Dharma?
So, Nitinji, let us rewind a bit. You said that dharma is something which upholds all beings, right? So, when we say that preservation of dharma or, dharma sanstapana, so are we doing a fundamental mistake in understanding the concept of dharma?
Not really, because the Shastras also say Dharmo Rakshati Rakshitaha. So when we are speaking about preservation, re-establishment and all, what we are merely saying is that we want to protect dharma so that dharma will in turn protect us. What is protecting dharma means? See, dharma does not need protection in the sense that dharma is not a human person, right? Protecting dharma means practicing dharma. Our acharyas, our rishis, our shastras have given this knowledge of dharma to us to protect us. But to let the dharma to protect us, we have to practice it, right? I mean, for example, I say, no, I know, I think there is I will say that, no, I know that Shastra says speaking truth is dharma, but speaking lie, falsehood is adharma, but I will speak falsehood only. Then the truth will not be able to protect us because we are not practicing it. So it is not incorrect, so to speak, that we need to establish dharma in the society, because what we are merely saying is we are understanding the fact that dharma is hardly being practiced in the society. So we need to re-establish practice of dharma so that overall the society's quality of life improves in every way, in every sort of. There is a Abhyudaya Nishreyasa, so that overall as a society we work towards that Abhyudaya Nishreyasa, overall well-being of the individual, of the society, and of the cosmos as a whole. Because we are all part of this, we are inseparable part of this cosmos. The first teaching that the Dharma Shastras give, for example, in the Manu Dharma Shastra, the Manusmriti, the first chapter, some people may find it interesting. In fact, the Western scholars have said the first chapter is an interpolation, because the first chapter speaks about cosmology, cosmogony. How does the creation happen? How did all the beings come to creation and all those things? What they don't understand is this is there for a particular reason, a very important reason. In our day-to-day life, we live a very anthropocentric life. What does anthropocentric life means? Anthropocentric life means that we think that we are the center of everything. For our benefit, everything can be exploited. That is a very specific result of industrialization, colonization, that we and what stands for modernity. The heart of modernity is anthropocentricity. That we think that the whole nature and everything is for our exploitation, so that we can use it as resource. But the Shastra is having this. Manu Smriti has the first chapter as cosmogony. It speaks about Srishti, how different kinds of worlds were created, how different kinds of beings were created. And humans are not the only beings, right? There are different worlds, different beings, Gandharvas and all, so many things. It is trying to put us in place, so to speak, that look, you're not the center of the world. You're just one of the created beings. You're one of the manifestations. You're one of the push. Yes, you're not a sinful being like the Abrahamics say. You have the divine spark in you, but so do other beings. So don't get carried away. Know your proper place and work for the benefit of the world. You're inseparable part of the universe, but you are not the universe yourself. So that is the Shastra teaching to us, that is what is needed, because without this mindset, we will think that what is this Shastra? Throw away this book. Today we have Constitution, that is Shastra. These are the idiotic, so to speak, sorry for the language, but these are the highly unfounded, shallow thoughts that we are having, because we think that our Shastra is just a book. It is just a book written by somebody outdated and not needed today. There is where we are making a mistake. The dharma that is being given to us, giving revealed to us, so to speak, by the rishis and others, is not something. It is for our benefit. It is not a storybook or some thesis being written today, left, right, and center, right? So these are, we have to understand that these are for our benefit. We need to understand our role. We are inseparable part of the universe, but we are still a part. We are not the entirety of universe itself. Knowing this reality, then we can think that how we can contribute to society, contribute to the universe as a whole. And then comes the dharma. Because when you are in alignment with the universal scheme, then you will be happy. When you are out of alignment, then you will be sorrow. So dharma is in alignment with the universe. Adharma is all that is in not in alignment universe. And dharma and adharma will themselves do not come and say that I am dharma, I am adharma. The actions in the human context is purely actions. And Manusmriti says that for the sake of discriminating between two different kinds of actions, Bhagavan created two kinds of actions. One is dharmic actions, one is adharmic actions. So it is Shastra which tells us that this is dharma, this is adharma. I and you cannot decide this is dharma. I and you at best, what we can do, based on the teachings of the Shastras, we can see what is applicable to our life, our situation, what is not, and how we can apply it. Because Shastra gives a very generic, broad perspective, so to speak, that is applicable to everyone or particular groups of people. But at the individual level, we have to take the call what we have to do, what we have to not. So there is a whole process given in the Shastra itself as a guidelines. How to determine what is dharma in a situation, that is also given. You just have to understand and implement.
Right, so that answers how do we define dharma and adharma. So, coming to our next question, in the title, you refer to Samanya Dharma as ethical duties common to all. It's not just ethics, right? So, will you please explain us the duty or responsibility aspect of it? Why do you say so?
Yes, I would do. I would just want to, before that, I would want to add one more thing on this. How do we know what is dharma and adharma? I just want to elaborate a bit on that because a lot of confusions are there. As I said, dharma. It's, see, everybody, even a murderer can justify himself, right? What he is doing, I'm doing for this reason, that reason. Everybody can justify them. We all justify. We all rationalize our actions. So that is no big deal. Everybody can do it. So that cannot be the basis of defining what is dharma and adharma, right? There must be a more sound basis, and that basis is what Veda is to begin with, and then comes the Smritis, and then comes the Itihasa Puranas, and our Acharya Vakyas, and finally, what is Achara? The customary practices that is going on in our families, and finally and lastly, our own inner conscience. Our Atmatrupti is what the Shastra says. There it says 4 levels, 4 kinds of pramana or the valid sources of knowledge. The fourth one is our Atmatrupti, not the first one. This Atmatrupti has to be in alignment with the Shastras and the practices of our gurus and the teachings of our gurus. But Atmatrupti is also needed. Why? Because end of the day, action is being done by me and you. And whatever action I do, only I will face the consequences of it, good or bad. Since consequences is faced by me, the decision is also with me. So I am the most weakest link, but also the most important link, right? So it is not that we are not a Abrahamic civilization wherein some book says something and that is the end of it. No, here what the book says is very important. What the Shastra says is very important. But what the Shastra says is not a commandment. It is not a legal law. You can derive laws out of it. You can derive practices out of it. But what the Shastras gives is Vidhi and Nisheda. What is Vidhi? You do this action, you will get this result in a positive manner. What is Nisheda? You if you do this action, you will get negative result. Hence, it is nisheda, prohibited. But doing or not doing is in our hands. Shastra cannot come and hold our hands or tie our hands or hold our by neck and say, you do it or otherwise I will kill you. No. So our role of Shastra is as a guiding force, as a teacher who guides the student, who teaches the student, as a father who looks after the children and guides them, holds their hands and helps them to get up. But ultimately, even if the parents are teaching the toddler to stand up and move around, it is a toddler who have to do it. If the toddler says I will not do it, no matter what you do, it will not happen. You can take the horse. There is a proverb, right? You can take the horse to the water, but you cannot put the water into his mouth. It has to drink. That is, it's the role of Shastra. So our culture, our philosophical schools give equal importance to the Shastras, to the custom, that is Achara, to the practices of noblemen, to the practices of people as accomplished in the Itihasa Puranas, for example, Sri Rama, Bhagavan Krishna, or even Arjuna, and all those. We learn from them as much as we learn from Ravana and Duryodhana also what not to do from. We learn from them. Today we have kind of mixed up. We are saying that we should not be like Rama, who is misogynist, but we should be like Ravana, who is a female savior. And that is the kind of arguments people are giving without understanding who Rama is and without understanding who Ravana was, unfortunately. Anyway, so moving on to your question, why ethical duties? Dharma has two parts. One is Samanya Dharma, the other is Vishesha Dharma. Samanya Dharma is these principles like tapas, shaucha, satya, asteya, etc. Truth, non-injury, cleanliness, purity, compassion. These are all called as Samanya Dharma. Samanya means that which is applicable to everyone, all humans, everyone. And it is not defined by race or gender or nationality or anything. It is applicable to everyone because it leads to chitta shuddhi. You follow it, it leads to your chitta shuddhi, your purification of the mind that will help you to reach the ultimate goal. But there is also Vishesha Dharma because you are living in a life in the world. We are not living in some forest isolated way, right? So wherein we interact with each other, we interact with the whole society. We have different roles in the society. We have different roles within the family. So there is why Vishesha Dharma is given, which is special tailor-made prescription, so to speak, tailor-made guidelines, so to speak, how to live our life. What are our duties? There, the duties aspect is coming. And both are duties. Why they are not? Samanya Dharma is not just ethics; it is also ethical duties because these are all obligations in the sense you perform dharma, then you attain this punyam. So there is a vidhi. So there is an obligation placed upon you, and you do not fulfill that obligation, then you are falling away from dharma. That also gives its result. See, if you are saying that I will not follow truth, I will follow falsehood, then that has its results, right? For example, Yudhishthira, all his life he spoke truth, but there is the Ashwatthama Kunjara episode wherein he had to say that Ashwatthama is dead, which is, he kind of, he did not say fully falsehood, but still the result of his action was that he did not walk on the earth. He actually, that story is that he walked a few inches above the earth, but his feet fell on the earth because as a result of this episode. So there is a consequences of karma, even if when you do not follow what is prescribed as dharma. That is always there. So you cannot run away from dharma. So it is an ethical duty in that sense, because the ethics are not something optional, so to speak. These are there, and if for our benefit we can follow it, or we may not choose to not follow it, that is fine. But there is karmic element always there, which gives you consequences of your action. That is why there is no notion of duty is added here, ethical duties. But I want to add here is that when we think about, when I say that truth is the only duty, or there may be situations. See, this is why Vishesha Dharma kind of contextualizes what is Samanya Dharma is saying. For example, Ahimsa is a Samanya Dharma, non-injury. But Vishesha Dharma of a soldier is to die on the battlefield, is to kill and be killed. He is doing Himsa, right? But that Himsa is not Adharma, because that is a Vishesha Dharma, that is a special duty for that soldier. So the beauty of Sanatana Dharma is it gives very generic, broad, universal principles, but at the same time, it also gives a tailor-made way of contextualization of these principles as applicable to different people in different situations. It is see, there is no one size, there is no one shoes of one size that is fit for everybody. Our feet sizes are different, right? So our requirements, our temperaments, our stage in the spiritual progress is all different. So keeping all these things in mind, and for the well functioning of the society, because society is not homogeneous. The very fundamental truth recognized in Hindu culture is diversity. So many people, so many paths. So there are millions of people, there are millions of paths, you can say. However, this does not mean there is only chaos. So it balances between harmony, unity, and diversity. You singular and the multiplicity. That is why there is Samanya Dharma and there is Vishesha Dharma, and both are the Samanya Dharma is ethical duty. Duty is added to stress the point that it is not simply an optional thing. That no, if I like, I will say truth. If I don't like, I will say falsehood. It's my wish, my life. My life, I'll go on a high road, whatever I want to do. I only live once. These are all the kind of language we use today. It is not like that, because if you are following falsehood, unless that is your Vishesha Dharma in some circumstances, for example, those who are in the intelligence services, the raw and such spy networks, they live by falsehood. They have to. That is their Vishesha Dharma. There, the Vishesha Dharma trumps out the Samanya Dharma. So they won't get any papam by doing that Vishesh Dharma, because they're doing it for a greater Dharma. But in general, even in their case also, in everybody's case, you cannot say that I will say live by falsehood and then nothing happens to us. No, there is consequences, karmic consequences. You do dharma, you get punyam and you get sukham, and you get chitta shuddhi. You do papam, you get the opposite. There is more and more chitta shuddhi, more and more bondage to the world, and you get papam, which is dharmic, karmic demerit, and as a consequences, we will be suffering, if not in this life, in the next.
So, Nitinji, you said Samanya Dharma and Vishesh Dharma. So, I understood about what is Samanya Dharma and what's Vishesh Dharma. But, how would you fit this into the context of Swadharma? How was it different from that?
Okay. So now different people will explain Swadharma in a different way. But my understanding from my limited study of the Shastras is that Swadharma is a combination, a harmonious combination of Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. Because that is why these two categories are given. See, in for example, in Abrahamic conditions on different religions, you will see there is only commandments which are basically Samanya Dharma. Thou shall not lie, thou shall not kill, but there is no scope for specialized Vishesha Dharma. Therein lies the problem, because you cannot apply single brush on everything, because life situations are very diverse. So when it comes to Swadharma, then we have to harmonize Samanya Dharma with Vishesha Dharma. For example, take the example of a Kshatriya, a ruler of a country. The common ethics that we apply in our day-to-day life does not apply to geopolitics. There is only one rule, there is only one ethic. Protection of your people, preservation of your culture, of your land, and abhyudaya nishreyasa of your whole praja. And as a part of that, it is also needed that you expand your kingdom, you expand your influence, You take more and more territories to you. All this comes. So that involves lot of treachery, that involves lot of violence, that involves playing all kinds of dirty game that is there. You have to do it because that is your Vishesha Dharma. Because you are speaking a Raja's, a governmental head's main duty is to the well-being of his people, well-being of his country, his culture, his people, the overall Abhyudaya Nishres of his people, right? So that means also he has the power of danda, that is punishment. If there is, he cannot say that, oh, ahimsa paramo dharma, then so that let me not punish everybody. No, there is no prison in my kingdom. There is a funny serial, I don't remember the name in Hindi, or they make all kind of nonsense serial. There was this serial of some ideal kingdom without any army. There are so good people. There is no army. All are good people in the society. And then there is a evil person who is trying to, misuse it and attack that kingdom. See, these are all nonsensical ideas because they have no understanding of neither Shastras or culture, because they are portraying it in a civilizational culture which is Hindu. This is not Hindu culture. Our Hindu culture is that the duty of a ruler is to punish the wicked and protect the righteous, right? So that is his duty. And towards that end, he has to do a lot of things. For example, I gave you the example of spy network. That is most. If you read Kautilya and Arthashastra, you will understand how important it is that. So we need to very much have this clarity in mind when it comes to Swadharma. We need to ask ourselves, each of us. First of all, there is the ethical aspect. We need to understand what are the ethical aspects. The second is, where are we? What is our temperament? What is our location, times? Vishesha Dharma is all about this. Your duties, your responsibility changes with your time, space, location, your varna, your ashrama, everything. If you are Brahmana, your duty is completely different. If you are Kshatriya, your duty is completely different. But if it is a case of emergency, as an apadharma, this is called, then all the normal prescriptions goes out of the ball. Everything changes. For example, Shaucha is one of the important dharma. It is a common Samanya dharma. But there is a Vishesha aspect also there. The Shaucha is applicable to Brahmanas, the Vaidikas who do Yagyas and all. It is very different. It's very strict. Compared to those who are working as soldiers or engineers or laborers or whatever it is very different for them. But when there is a war, when there is the attack from the enemy, all Shaucha goes kaput. You cannot practice Shaucha when the country is in that threat, your life is at that threat. You have this very good example in Mahabharata, wherein I think, I don't remember which Rishi, was it Durvasa, was it Vishwamitra? This is a famous story. I think it was Vishwamitra. There's a great drought. There is no food anywhere. So he was starving for many months now. And finally he sees in the jungle a family having lot of dogs. Those family used to rear the dogs, eat them and all. But being Vishwamitra, being a Brahmana, because he had from Kshatriya has attained the Brahmanahood, so he was Brahmana now, he cannot eat dog meat. It is prohibited to him as per the Shastras. But he goes and eats the meat. The homeowner says that, no, you are a Brahmana, you cannot eat it, it's against your dharma. Why do you want to violate dharma? He is giving a teaching to Vishwamitra, but Vishwamitra says, you don't understand. The highest dharma is self-protection. If I survive today, then tomorrow I can do prayashchittam. Prayashchittam means repentance, expiatory rites. That whatever mistake I have done, I can do tapas and rectify it. But if I die today, what dharma, what adharma? So because there is an emergency situation, my normal rules of dharma do not apply. So for the last 1,000 years, when you are in Islamic colonization, British, European colonization, even today, we are under a secular colonization. We are living in apat condition. That is why you do not see, we see so much dharma is hardly there in the society in a few pockets. Few people trying to, protect it as best they can. So this is so we need to understand that when you speak about swadharma, there is a unique combination which is uh, different from for a different person. But there is a combination of samanya dharma and vishesha dharma, and this combination changes in different situations. In some situations, the vishesha dharma trumps out samanya dharma's concerns, but in some situations, samanya dharma is most needed, most important. They're the basic foundation, because they are basic foundation which are eternal principles. It is not that in Satya Yuga truth was dharma and Kali Yuga falsehood has become dharma. It is not that. Satya remains dharma in all ages, irrespective of the fact that today to wade through our life situations, we may have to do falsehood in some situations. That is needed, fine. That is inevitable. But that does not make falsehood as a dharma. It remains a dharma only. As a absolute principle, that remains a dharma. So swadharma means when Krishna says swadharmo nidhanam shreya paradharma bhayavaha. I may have got the verse a bit mistake there. I don't have it in front of me. But basically, what the verse says is that it is better to die doing your swadharma, not to do somebody else. A soldier has to do his swadharma. He cannot say that, no, 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 I have these shaucha conditions. I cannot eat this or that when I'm moving in to attack the enemy. You have to live, you have to live according to your situations. So swadharma is that. So there is ethical aspect, but there is also other things, lot of things, because we are living not in living in a jungle isolated from others, because we are living in society and we have a certain role in a family. uh, Men have role as fathers, as sons, as apart from professional roles also there. Similarly, women have roles as mothers, daughters, professional roles, and then they both have husband wife role. So many roles, so many duties, so many responsibilities. These all come under swadharma. And life is so complicated. You always ending up, the choice is not black and white. There is no one choice, dharma, go ahead, do it, and the other choice, adharma, go ahead to do it. That may be so. Even in Treta Yuga, that was not there. Even though Sri Rama was a straight shooter, he had that clarity. He is the personification of dharma. But even then, today that clarity is not there. It was not there even in the Krishna's time. Krishna and Bhima and Arjuna had to devise a trick to bring down Jarasandha. They did not defeat him in a straight one-to-one war. There is an interesting conversation in Mahabharata where Krishna clearly says, look, it is not possible to defeat Jarasandha in the direct war. He is too much strong. We have to defeat him by deceit. Deceit. सीधी उंगली से घी नहीं निकली तो टेढ़ी उंगली करना पड़ता. That is the way of today. So we have to balance Samanya Dharma and Vishesha Dharma. We need to have a very strong moral compass and a boundary. But my boundary will not be same as your boundary or anybody else. That is why Shastra is the very big guiding force. Because left to us, we'll end up rationalizing and justifying all our actions. That is a great problem, because everybody justifies. Even a person who takes a newborn baby and throws it in the dustbin or on the railway track, there are cases you can check in the newspapers. They will also justify their actions and giving some or the other. We should not end up doing that. We should have the Shastras as our basis, take our Acharyas and Gurus as our guides, and then try to see what we can and how we can do to the best of our ability. There may be situations which is so difficult that 10 options in front of us, all the 10 are adharma from an absolute Shastric perspective. Then we may have to choose one which is least adharma. Because Shastra gave the widest possible interpretations, but when we do actions, then it is not so easy. But having the knowledge of the Shastra will help you to decide what is the better way to go ahead. That is the goal of all these Dharma Shastras, Itihasa, Puranas, all these stories that are told, is to tell you how to contextualize teachings. we find so many similar situations in this Puranas. If you read Itihasa Puranas, Mahabharata, and all, different people in a similar situation, but their actions completely different. They all acted in a different way when they were faced with similar situations. So we can learn what to do and what not to do, and what is in accordance with our temperaments, what is not in accordance with our temperament. So this is a whole. This appears complicated, but when you engage, unfortunately today everyone want to say, I want to read Veda, I want to read Veda. You won't get anything by simply reading Veda in translations. What we need to actually concentrate is to read the Itihasa Puranas. That is for all of us. It is given for the whole society to guide us. The Rishis, the Vyasa Maharshi has given it for Kali Yuga only. We read it, we understand it, we reflect upon it, then we will be able to live our life in a more richful, more harmonious, and more fulfilling way. Anyways, most of the people today run away from the term Shastra itself. They say only Gita is, Bhagavad Gita is Hindu Dharma, and the end of the matter. And that is an unfortunate consequences of last few decades. Gita is very important text. It is a revelation of Bhagavan Krishna, but it is not the be all and end all, the middle, beginning, and the end of the Sanatan Dharma. It is one sort of teaching which is very useful, very important, but not the only teaching.
So your explanation of Samanya Dharma and Vishesh Dharma brings me to a conclusion that in last few centuries or last few decades, we have messed up with all these boundaries, and we are so uprooted from our culture that today we are in certain conditions when even if the Indian Army kills some terrorists across the borders, we tend to apply human rights there. So this is the unfortunate mess in which we have landed. So, Nitinji, moving on to next question. I'll like to say that one part of your book which I absolutely loved was the Rita, Satya, and Dharma correlation which you explained. It's wonderfully explained there. So, will you please explain it once more?
Dharma is the Satya we practice through our actions, whereas Satya is the Dharma in speech, and Rita is Dharma and Satya in our mental thought. There is an alignment of thought, speech, and action. In the individual context, we can think it like that. The Rita, the Satya, and Dharma, they have to be in alignment. What we think, what we intuitively know, what is at the core of our being is Rita. And when that Rita becomes expressed in our mental, in our speech, in the way we speak, what we speak, that is Satya. And when it is implemented in action, that becomes Dharma. That is why the Upanishads and all says is Dharma is Satya, Satya is Dharma. Satya Paramo Dharma is also said. There are so many things. There is a, Shankaracharya, there is a Brihadaranyaka verse which says that, that Dharma which is expressed as conduct, being practiced by people, is Satya. Satya is the fact of being in accordance with the scriptures. So this is a very, and the same thing when it is practiced is called Dharma. This is a very simple definition. What is in accordance with Shastras is Satya, and that which is in accordance with Shastras is practiced in actions, that becomes Dharma. And what the Shastras speaks about is Rita. It is in accordance with the Rita. Because Shastra, what is the role of Shastra? It's a Pramana. Pramana means source of knowledge. It is giving knowledge about the Rita or Dharma. So these are all interlinked, interchangeable words. So that is why sometimes it leads to confusion.
So I just want to say that we have just completed introduction, definition, and classification part of the book. We are yet to come to the sources and Samanya Dharma elements common to everyone. So it's a very succinct book, but it's wonderful. I highly recommend you all to read this. And so now we'll come to the Samanya Dharma elements common to everyone. So, Nitinji, when you refer to Manusmriti, wherein you say that ahimsa is the most important tenet of Samanya Dharma, and it should be practiced in action, speech, as well as mind. So, in action is understood to some extent, but how should we practice it in speech and mind?
Okay. Wonderful question. So basically, in the same Manusmriti, in the, I think 10th chapter, I don't remember the exact chapter, it speaks about different kinds of adharmas or papam or sin, so to speak, that we can do at the level of the body, at the level of the mind, and at the level of the speech. One of them at the level of the body is, of course, doing violence, doing injury to somebody else, killing one or pestering somebody and all. At the level of the my speech, level of speech, speaking harshly, speaking falsehood, backbiting, gossiping, these are all adharma. And at the level of mind, even thinking about hurting somebody is adharma. Even thinking that I should bring somebody down, he has gone ahead of me, let me bring down. Or he has done me some wrong, let me kill him, let me do this, let me rob him. All these thoughts. So when it is said that ahimsa should be practiced in all three levels, it means that we have to restrain not only our actions, that we should not only go and do injury to somebody in action, but we should not also do injury through our words or in our mind also. In the mind also, we should be restraining. We should be observant of our mind and see that our thoughts are pure. Our thoughts are not harmful because all actions have their roots in thoughts ultimately. First comes the thoughts and then it actualizes into action. Most of the time we don't all of us don't end up become murderers and killers and other things because we are too afraid. We are cowards basically. That is why we don't actually realize those thoughts. But if we had power, if somebody gets power to some or the other way, then the real character will come forward. Is whether he is willing to do it what it needs or not. In some contexts that is good thing, but in many contexts that is not a good thing. So basically it means that there must be, as I said, rita, satya, dharma, there must be an alignment. Whatever you do, must be an alignment. There must be no hypocrisy. You cannot go give a long speech on something and your action cannot be completely opposite to it.
So coming to our next question, Nitinji, you explain. Can you please explain the importance of sacrificing animals in yajnas, and how was it not a part of hinsa?
Okay, a very important question considering all the controversies going on. I would again start with the very basics. How do we know something is dharma and something is adharma? It is the Shastras. The most important of them is Veda. Veda itself tells us ahimsa is important tenet of dharma. That is why ahimsa is dharma. But the same Veda which tells us that ahimsa is dharma, but also tells us that in the yagyas, for example, pashus are to be sacrificed. There are certain yagyas where the pashus are sacrificed. Not in all yagyas. Very small number of yagyas there are there. For example, Ashwamedha yagya is there, which the kings used to do. There is a particular branch of yagyas called as Pashubandha, which, as the name stands, it refers to the sacrifice as the Pashu or animal. If the Veda on one hand says ahimsa is the dharma, and other hand is to in this yagya you have to do this. Both are vidhi, both are prescriptions. So you cannot say that this one is correct and this one is wrong. What is dharma is given by Veda. If it is saying that ahimsa is dharma, that is dharma, okay. But if it is saying that yagyas pashu is to be given, that is also dharma. So you cannot say that that is adharma. So according to Mimamsa principles, the Pashu issue becomes the sacrifice of animals in the ritualistic context becomes an exception to this rule. Yes, ahimsa is a general dharma, but there is an exception in this particular context. You can sacrifice animals. So this is again comes to that samanya dharma and vishesha dharma that I said. There is a samanya dharma, the general prescription of ahimsa, but there are exceptions to that, which is in the sphere of the vishesha dharma. For example, using violence in war. using violence as punishment by the king to control the unruly elements in the society, using violence in self-defense. The Manusmriti and other Dharmashastra text says, even if you have to kill your guru, which is the highest papa that is possible. See, this is kind of a metaphorical explanation, not taken literally, but even literally taken, it means that if the guru comes to kill you, you can use violence to self-defense. That is the basically it is saying. So all these are exceptions you can consider to the general rule of ahimsa. And you can also see it in this way. Some of the traditions have argued it in this way, that because himsa is prescribed, this Pashubali in the ritualistic context is prescribed in the Shastras itself, then it also becomes ahimsa only, it is not himsa. Why? Because even there, though the animal is appearing as if we are committing violence on that at a physical level, in reality it is not being harmed, because the animal sacrificed in a yagya or even in a temple according to Tantra Sampradaya given to a Devi, that animal attains higher birth in the next life. It also attains Swarga. That is the result of Punyam. So the animal gets Punyam, karmic merit. So animal is not being hurt at the end of the day when you take the overall picture into account. Basically, the thing as I keep repeating is, when it comes to religious practices, when it comes to all these ritualistic practices, Shastra alone is our pramana. We cannot decide or sit and decide upon saying, no, this is human rights violation, this is animal rights violation, this is women's rights violation, because these issues do not come under their scope of scope. If a Tantra Shastra, for example, in where Kalika Purana and other Puranic and Tantric texts, which specifically Devi herself says in the text, that I need Pashubali, I need the Raktabali. See, there is a difference. In the Vedic path, the flesh of the Pashu is given in the Yagya. In the Tantric path, when the animal is sacrificed to Devi, it is the blood which is given. The blood represents Prana Shakti. The Prana Shakti of the life force of that animal which is given as a sacrifice to the deity. And the deity herself says there are certain forms of deity. See, deities are not. See, all these human justifications, generalizations that we are superimposing on deity, we have a common argument. No, how can a god ask for a bali? That is simply not possible. God is all kind of goody, mushy. See, that is an Abrahamic view of God. That is not our view. We have Brahman ultimately who needs nothing, but we also have deities, devatas. They have their own personality, not like us, they're completely different from us. They function from a very different logic, not our human logic. And these are all certain cosmic processes which have to happen the way it happens. Only then you get the said result. You cannot say that because of this my limited concerns, I will manipulate with a ritual. Then the ritual will not give the fruit. That's all. So if you want the ritual to give fruit, then you have to follow the Shastric way. That is what the Shastra reveals. Do this ritual in this way, then you get this fruit. So there are certain temples with certain deities, certain Ugra Devatas, especially Shakta deities, who require Pashubali. That is how it has to be there, in one way or the other. And that has a positive consequence not only for human society, but also for the animal in the consideration. She is mother of everybody, including that animal. It is not that she will somehow, see, if you reduce the whole religion into mere superstition, and the whole religious activity as merely a primitive human's attempt at understanding the world when we had no science, only then you have problem to all these rituals, because you are not considering rituals as techniques by which has particular result. You are considering it as superstitious belief which has no result. So you are then saying that no, we should not do this, do that, and all. You are reducing religion to some kind of Abrahamic faith, just as a belief, as everything. We believe in some kind of Bhagavan who is all mushy mushy, everything is over. So these are all lack of ignorance, derootedness from our own culture, which has and a great lot of propaganda done in the last 200 years that has resulted in these misunderstandings about the rituals.
So Nitinji, here you said that it's important. You'll bear some fruits if you sacrifice animals nearby. So I just wanted to ask. I don't know how relevant is this question, but is there any negative effect if we don't sacrifice them?
See, it depends on the context and this. Okay, if there is a certain deity who requires a sacrifice, then she has to be given. Otherwise, there will be negative effect. But there are certain rituals wherein there are alternatives ways of doing it also. So that has been already adapted you in many places. But it is also important to know that alternative is not same as the actual. There is a change in the nature of the results that comes, right? The actual gives one kind of result. Alternatives may give a similar kind of result, but it is not the same. And as far as negative result is considered, if a certain shastra is saying certain things have to be done in a certain way, and if you are violating that, then of course there will be negative result, because this is different from using alternatives. See, when we speak about alternatives, the shastra itself gives alternatives, but there are certain conditions, there are no alternatives. When the actual is possible, then if you're deliberately taking upon alternative, then also it is wrong. Now you have a choice. I don't like Pashubali, I do not need to do it. Nobody is forcing anybody to do it. Nobody is forcing, nobody is telling it every house had to sacrifice an animal once a year. Nobody is doing. Our dharma does not work like that. We are a tailor-made civilization. Different people with different temperaments, different practices, different customs, different communities, different practices. Just as it is wrong to say that everybody has to do Pashubali to the deity, it is also wrong to stop those communities, those temples, those rituals wherein the Pashubali is happening, to socially and politically and legally intervene and stop those practices. Both are wrong. Both are ethically wrong. And both are dharmically wrong. And both have serious consequences as well. There will always be consequences, no matter what your actions. Even if a shopkeeper gives you 1 rupee change extra and you do not, you realize that he has given you 1 rupee change extra and you do not give it back, that is faulty. There is a karmic consequences even as such a small action as that, because that comes under steya. Steya means stealing. You are not literally stealing, but you are taking, because stay is not just stealing, it is also taking what does not rightfully belong to you. If a shopkeeper is supposed to give you 5 rupees change, that means you have to take 5 rupees change. If he has given you 6 rupees change by mistake, then you have to return one, right? It doesn't matter shopkeeper is a thuggy and he is a corrupt person. He is actually overcharging you. That is his karma, not yours. So
And
we have to have this
if,
perspective.
yes, and what if someone say I go to a shop and by mistake I take 1 or 2 rupees extra. So will it also add to my karmic account, or what should I do with that money then when I realize that it's my
See,
mistake?
again, a hypothetical and interesting question. See, there are two ways of you can do actions, intentionally or unintentionally, and both have their own consequences. Consequence is always there in for all actions, right? Now, if you have taken 1 rupee back by mistake, it was a mistake. It will still have a karmic result, but it will be very less compared to what it is when you deliberately not return. Now, if you have taken back that, you realize that after some time, you can go back and give it that money, right? That is always an option. But if you choose to not do it, then that is your choice. And that choice has a consequence. Now, in the other case, you don't know. Many times it happens, we don't even know that we have committed something. That is unintentional. We don't even know. Those are all minor things. There will be minor consequences. That is why we do sadhana. See, there are sadhana, when we take sankalpa, when you do puja, in the sankalpa there is a part portion in the Sanskrit you read, durita kshaya dwara, Parmeshwara Prityartha, Mamopata Samasta Durita Kshayadvara. Samasta means all, Durita Kshayadvara. Kshaya means removal, Durita means papam. All the intentional and unintentional minor things, many of the things that we do every day. Please free me from all the consequences, wrong consequences of that. See, we cannot live a life we are doing 100% punyam. It is not possible. Take for the simple example, kitchen. When you cook, cooking results in deaths of certain lot of microorganisms. There is a himsa, right? But you cannot simply stay away without cooking. I will not eat appa. I will live by only air. You can't do that. We have to do what we have to do to serve. But that does not mean that cooking, the killing of that animals, that microorganisms does not generate any karmic consequences. It does. However minute it is, it does. And when you do sadhana, these things become removed. You become free of all these things which you don't realize that you have committed. For example, agriculture, it involves lot of violence. We don't realize agriculture is violent. You literally kill so many plants, right? That has a jiva. But paid bharna hai, we have to do it. But the point is, the magnitude of karmic consequences differs in different situations. For example, you grow something and you eat food, the vegetarian food, it involves less magnitude of adharma because the jiva in the plants is in a very unmanifest state. It is in a very involved state. But it is in a more manifested in the case of animals because it can move, it can make voice, it is in a more movable thing, movable entity. So the jiva is in a more attached state, more it can feel more pain. So the karmic consequences attached to it is more. But you still have to do if you have to survive. For example, you go into some Iceland or some Antarctica and you cannot say that I will eat only idli vada or sambar or something like that, right? You have to eat fish on whatever is available there. The point I'm telling is everything is changes from context to context. In some context, some things which are adharma in other context becomes dharma. But there will always be karmic consequences, which is very difficult to pinpoint. Ishvara alone is the one who knows all our karmas and he can give us proper fruits of this karma. All our karmas produce what is called as apurva, an invisible force. The fruits are there in the invisible format. It is there in our causal body. We have three kinds of bodies: the physical, the subtle, and the causal. Karana Sharira it is called. As the name stands, it is the cause of our birth. It gives us this body. The Ishvara decides, look, now it's time for you to take birth in this house to these parents, whether you are born as a rich with a golden spoon or you are born as a beggar with no food for 1 week. It's all based on your past karmas. That does not mean that you have no say. That does not mean that it is all about fate and nothing. The correct understanding of karma is, yes, our past karmas, the fruits of it, we faced it in this life. The people we meet, the situations we are faced in is a result of that. But we have a choice. We have a free will. That is also karma. The how we make a choice in this life decides our future results. The how our future life will be. How our future in this life itself will be. So it is not that there is everything is destiny. I have no control. I have a control. Karma is about control. The choice is there. We always have choice. Sometimes there may be only 2 choices. Sometimes there may be 10 choices. Sometimes we may not be able to take that choice which is the most correct one. But that is on us. Because we do not have the samarthyam or strength to face the consequences of that correct choice. Because that may be too difficult for us. But there are other 9 choices which are wrong, but different magnitudes of wrong. A good example I'll give you is abortion. It's a controversial topic. The Shastras are very clear. The abortion is adharma. It is just like a Brahmahatya. Abortion is adharma. There is no two questions about it. But consider this. There was a news in some way. There is a video being circulated recently. A mother who fought with her husband. She recorded some video wherein she is beating her child mercilessly with, and he is hospitalized. I don't know whether he's dead or alive. This video is going on for the last few days in the social media. I don't know whether the audience has seen it or not. It is horrible. It is a 2-3 minutes video. You can't watch it. It's merciless. She is not fit to be a mother. And there are so many people who throw their child after birth, thinking whatever reasons that could be. They throw it on the railway platforms, throw it on the railway tracks, throw it in the dustbins that the dogs have killed and eaten. Is that adharma? Is those adharma not worse than doing abortion? Because if you're doing abortion before your 3 or 4th month of pregnancy, that the jiva has not even identified with this physical fetus. It is there, but it is not identified. I've written it on this detail on abortion series of articles. There, the adharma is less. If you don't want a child, please abort. Instead of being a villainous, a murderous, a demonic entity in the name of parents and killing your children after giving birth like that. So there is relativity. There are different choices. Some abortion is not dharma. I repeat again, but killing the child after they are born by beating the hell out of them or throwing into a dustbin is a much bad choice, even for that person who is doing that choice. That has a more serious consequences of karma. And more pain for that little bit child. She had just come into this life, so painful, so horrible. So this is an extreme example, but this applies to all our life actions, because as I said, there is no white and black. There is a whole shades of gray in our life when we make options, when we make choices. And it is ours. We do not always have strength to make the whitest choice possible. We may have to compromise and do the best possible thing. Try to avoid the darkest of the choices at least, because ultimately it doesn't matter what others says, what society says. Karmic consequences we have to, each individual has to face. I am stressing this again and again. I think I might have used this term 50 times now. Karmic consequences, this needs to be kept in mind. It doesn't matter, the whole society does not know you're corrupt, but your conscience knows. The one who is in your heart, the Purusha, he knows or she knows. And you will get the consequences of it. No matter how many lives you will have to take birth, you will take birth again and again and again. It doesn't matter, you may not take birth as a human all the lives. Please be assured, read my book Isha Upanishad, the latest one. I have given an elaborate account, especially from the Puranas, that human birth is not easy. If you're doing adharma, you may take birth as an insect as well. The Upanishad says that. You may take birth as an animal as well. And in fact, the Manusmriti says, if you have done adharma through speech, we spoke about speech, right? And I mentioned about falsehood and other things. Then, if the magnitude of that adharma by speech is so high that you may be born as animal, what is the most important character of an animal? It cannot speak. It tries to speak, but it has very difficulty to get out a sound, but it is not able to speak. That is a pain and suffering that the jiva in the form of animal is facing. So Manusmriti says, if you do this kind of adharma by speech, then you can end up in that form of life in your next birth. If you are doing adharma by body, by your actions, to an extreme extent, see, most of us live a balanced life. We done some adharma, we do some dharma, there is a balanced life. So we get human birth. But if you are doing so much adharma through body itself, so much, it's unforgivable, then you may be born as a tree or a plant as well. You won't even be able to move your limbs, Because you have done adharma by your limbs, by your hands and legs and everything, you will be punished like that. And when you do your adharma by manasika, from the mind, then when you get to human birth, you will be always facing sorrow, suffering, mental suffering. Even if you become a very rich person, you'll still be have tension one way or the other way. Rich people are not, highly super rich people are not without tension. They always have some tension. So many money is there. What if I will lose all of them? Right? That is the greatest tension there. So that tension is also a result of the papams you did in the past. A truly rich is one who is without any tension, who is truly free. And that is only a sannyasi, a real sannyasi, not dogi kind, a real sannyasi. He is truly free. And that could be a householder also, because sannyasa need not be a renunciate. Even a householder like Krishna stayed in the life, he was Stita Pragya, nothing affected him. When he played Ras Leela, he played Ras Leela. When he left Vrindavana, he left it forever. He never came back. That was his Stita Pragya. So this is the fact. We have to understand what Shastra really reveals is truth. It is reality. There is no questions. There is no things about no what this does not apply today. We have there are aspects of Shastra which refer to the practical aspect. The society has changed. The practical aspect has to be contextualized and interpreted accordingly. But the essence of the teachings remains, because essence of dharma is eternal. As I gave the example, Satya cannot be something in Satya Yuga. Satya is dharma. In Kali Yuga, it is adharma. It is not possible.